Today, I want to show you guys the easiest setup guide for setting up n8n MCP so that you can start vibe coding your n8n workflows. Okay, so the first thing is to go to this GitHub repository, which I linked in the description below. And then just having an overview of this MCP server, it has a lot of context about the node documentation as well as different tools, so that I just provide a much better context when AI is trying to generate the n8n workflows. And then in order to use this MCP server, the easiest way is to use Claude Desktop. So you can head to claude.ai/download and then just download the Claude Desktop with your specific operating system. Okay, so once you have downloaded Claude Desktop and installed it, you will be in this homepage with a new chat window. In order to have the best result with the n8n MCP server, we need to be at least on the Pro subscription so that we have access to Claude Opus 4 with the extended thinking. Now, in case you don't already have that subscription, what you can do is to go to settings, go to the billings tab, and just subscribe to the Pro plan. Okay, now following to the next step, we'll scroll down on this GitHub page and then just copy this basic configuration with documentation tools only. So copy this entire block, and then we can head back to Claude Desktop. Now go to settings and then to the developer, click on this edit config button. You'll see a final window appearing with this Claude Desktop JSON file. So you open it with your favorite editor and then just copy and paste this entire script inside. Or if you are only interested in installing this MCP server on top of your existing ones, you can copy and paste only this block and just add it to a new MCP server in the list. So what you can do here is that to save this file and then just head back to Claude, we'll do a restart just to make sure that the MCP server is running. So when it has successfully restarted, you can now see that the n8n MCP is running. Alright, so the next step will be to go to the Projects tab on Claude Desktop. And just to note that the Project tab is only available on the Pro plan or above. And you can click on New Project and just use n8n generation as the title. So this will be a new project specific to the n8n generation. And then the next step will be to go back to that GitHub repository, scroll to a section called Claude Project Setup, and then just copy and paste this entire system prompt to the project system instruction. You can copy and paste this, save the instruction, and then this one just kind of give Claude a better understanding on different tools that are available in the MCP server and just give it a better personality to generate the workflows in a more accurate manner. Now we have everything set up, let's do a test run together to see how the MCP server is working under the hood. Now before we do that, remember to turn the model to Claude Opus 4 as well as checking the extended thinking in the settings tab. And then we can also do a quick sanity check to make sure that all the MCP tools from this server is enabled. Now, after we do that, we can now do a prompt here, such as create an n8n workflow that searches the web using different APIs and return me results about news and trigger the workflow with a schedule trigger. So let's see how it is working under the hood. Okay, so now Claude has finished the execution. Let's take a look on the thinking process. So you can see that Claude started with the tools documentation tool, which kind of just checks what are the available tools in this MCP server. And then you can see that it triggers the search nodes too to look for how schedule trigger is being used, and then HTTP request node as well as different tools like Brave Search, Perplexity as what we have defined in the prompt. And then going on, it also searches for some core data transformation nodes such as merge, combine, and aggregate. And then in the end, it just kind of defines the architecture out and asks for the approval. So then I said yes, proceed with the design. It's going to search for the MCP server tools again. And eventually it will create an n8n workflow in JSON and try to validate whether the nodes are correct. So this is like the first version that Claude has generated, and it actually iterated a few times after multiple validation to generate the latest version. So you can see that at the end of each generation, it will always try to trigger this validate workflow tool to make sure that everything is connected successfully. Now, sometimes you do hit the context limit for one execution, so you do have to click on continue to allow the Claude to just continue the execution, and eventually it will just kind of give you a summary of how the workflow is done. And now we can just kind of copy this and then head to our n8n workspace in a blank canvas and just see how this is generated. So you can see that it's actually pretty accurate. When I click on schedule trigger, it's at 10 a.m. and then it has the Perplexity AI search node, Brave Search, and SERP API. So it's just missing the credentials, and it looks like the APIs and URLs and the values are also pretty accurate. It probably requires a little bit of adjustment, but it has pretty much a very good starting point. So you can see that it merges everything, do some processing, as well as giving me 3 options to get the output. So I can have Slack, I could have email, or I could also have the save to file. And then I just want to show you guys with a fair comparison with another attempt that I made, specifically saying that do not use any MCP tools, but to generate the n8n workflow. So let's see how the one without the MCP server is working. So I just copy and paste the JSON here. You can see that at least we don't have the question mark nodes here, but you can see that the nodes are not connected. It's much less cleaner than the previous version that we just see. And then also if you click inside a node, there are a bunch of errors here that it's just a much less sophisticated starting point to start with. Now this MCP server doesn't just stop here, but there's also a bunch of n8n management features that are available that many other people didn't talk about. So if we just go back to this full configuration, and then you can see there's two additional parameters here, which is n8n API URL and the API key. So these are the keys that allows us to actually do some management, such as creating workflows and editing the workflows directly from Claude, so without copy and pasting. Now what we can do here is that going back to the config file that we have earlier, and then just copy and paste these two lines here. And the next step will be to get the API URL and the API key. Now just a quick note that this n8n API feature is only available on the starter plan of n8n Cloud or above, so you do have a little bit of a recurring cost if you want to do that. However, if you are using a self-hosted version of n8n and you have the secure HTTPS link, you also have this option. So what you can do is that you can go to the settings and then just make sure you save the workflow. So go to n8n APIs tab in the settings tab, and now you can create an API key from here and just name it as Claude, for example, and I'll leave the scopes as it is. So save it, and now you can copy this API key. So going back to the Visual Studio Code, I can now copy and paste here, and then for the URL, it will be the domain name for your self-hosted instance or your n8n cloud. So just copy and paste this to this. So there we are. We have everything set up. Now, if you don't already have a self-hosted instance, I also made another YouTube video talking about how you can just pay $5 per month to set up a self-hosted instance on Railway. So feel free to also check that out. So now we have the n8n API set up. Let's see how Claude is able to use the MCP server to create a workflow directly. So I'm going to paste this request in, and Claude will just kind of do a health check with the API and then create a workflow if everything looks fine. Now Claude just finished the request. You can see that it triggers several MCP tools, such as this n8n create workflow, which is kind of copy and paste the JSON artifact that we have to the n8n API request, and then also validate the workflow to make sure that it has successfully created. So if I just go back to my n8n workflow, you can see that this workflow has now been created with the exact same JSON we just copied from Claude. So you can essentially just vibe code your n8n workflow without even leaving Claude Desktop. And I'm just kind of walking you through the entire workflow management tools available. So we just use this n8n create workflow to create a new workflow from the JSON artifacts that we generated. But it also has several other things, such as updating the workflow, deleting the workflow, as well as even triggering the execution of the workflow, as well as deleting execution and listing the executions. So it's kind of like a fully fledged n8n management tool on top of the n8n workflow generation. So that's it for today, and if you want to further level up your AI automation and AI agent skills, make sure to check out AI Builders Lab Pro, which will have tons of AI learning resources, including 2 n8n courses from Essential to Mastery, so that you really get all the foundation knowledge as well as advanced concept to build out your customized n8n workflows, as well as 80 plus created AI tools and 120 plus ready-to-use AI automation templates. And if you find this video useful, make sure to like and subscribe my channel, and it will really help us to create more high quality content like this going forward. Thank you for watching.